It was a mistake. CEO dumps. Pregnant wife. Then crumbles. Years later, seeing the proof of love, the cold truth. Subscribe now and hit that like button if you believe that true love always finds its way back, no matter how many years pass. In the comments, tell us, what would you have done immediately after Alexander's cruel words? Alexander Sterling stood by the window of his penthouse. The city sprawled beneath him, an organism of light and movement, all manageable, all under control, just the way he liked it. He built empires of steel and glass, believing emotions were liabilities for the unambitious. Behind him, Clara, her arms crossed, hoped for understanding. But deep down, she knew the end. When Alexander finally turned to her, his voice was measured, the same tone he used to close multi-million-dollar deals. "It wasn't love, Clara. You were a mistake," he said, each word a deliberate cruelty. He expected tears, pleading. Instead, she simply nodded. "Then I hope you never make the same mistake twice," she said quietly, her voice trembling but firm enough to make him momentarily flinch. She walked past him, the faint scent of jasmine lingering long after the door closed. Alexander poured a drink, telling himself it was the right decision. Love, whatever it was, only distracted people. Meanwhile, across the city, Clara sat alone, the truth settling in. She had loved him completely, believing a heart existed beneath his walls. She was wrong. Days later, she packed silently. She left her job, sold what she could, and moved to a small coastal town hours away. The air was cleaner. The sea sounded like forgiveness. She found work in a small florist shop owned by an old widow who asked no questions. A month later, when she saw the 2 lines appear on the pregnancy test, the world tilted. "You are not a mistake," she whispered to her still flat belly, a fierce, trembling resolve blooming inside her. She would never let Alexander's words define her child. Chapter 1. The Quiet Void. Back in the city, Alexander barely noticed her absence. He immersed himself in work, but sometimes, late at night, a thought crossed his mind. How silent she had been when she left. No tears, no anger, just silence. It unsettled him, but he always pushed it away, reminding himself that emotions were irrelevant. His empire grew, but his heart felt heavier. The void he had cultivated was closing in. He found no satisfaction in his victories. Sometimes, seeing a parent with a child on the street, an unknown pang twisted in his chest. One afternoon, he returned home and found the scent of jasmine in the elevator, a perfume some stranger must have worn. It left him immobile. His throat tightened as he entered his sterile penthouse, the silence now unbearable. He began to wonder if he had made a mistake. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Clara was building a new rhythm. Her life revolved around the scents of roses and lavender. Her pregnancy was beginning to show. Nobody judged her. The townspeople simply accepted her. She would sit by the shore, whispering to the baby, "You'll have his eyes, perhaps, but not his heart. Yours will be better." As the months passed, the baby became her world. In the city, Alexander found himself plagued by unresolved dreams. Sometimes of Clara, sometimes of a child he didn't recognize, a small voice calling his name. He woke up with his heart pounding, finally feeling fear. Fear of what he had done. Fear of what he might have lost without even knowing it. Chapter 2. The Ethereal Blue Eyes. The baby arrived, a girl she named Lily. The first time Clara held her, fear and anger dissolved into pure love. Lily had Alexander's eyes, incredibly blue and bright. Every time Clara looked into them, her heart ached with a confused mix of love and loss. Those eyes were innocent, untainted by his cruelty. The first months were hard. Money was tight. Sleep was rare. but Lily's smile made everything bearable. The kind old florist, Mrs. Whitaker, helped out, rocking the baby while Clara arranged bouquets. Clara started drawing again, filling her sketchbook with the sea, the town, and sketches of her daughter. In the city, Alexander's life became heavier. He dated women who understood success, but no one stayed long. Something inside him was numb. He began waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing, tormented by dreams. He started playing the piano again, and as the soft notes filled the empty space, he closed his eyes and saw Clara's face. The calm disappointment in her eyes that last night. It broke through the wall he had built around himself, leaving him breathless. He realized that everything he touched turned cold. 2 years later, Lily was curious and bright. Her laughter filled their small home. Clara often thought that her daughter carried a purity that neither pain nor time could touch. But Alexander was also beginning to crack. He was seeing the image of a child on the street, an unknown desire twisting in his chest. He stood on his balcony, looking at the endless horizon, and for the first time in years, he whispered her name. He didn't know why, but a quiet voice told him that the life he had built was not a victory, but a punishment. Chapter 3. The Convergence. Lily turned 3. One evening, after her small birthday party, she leaned against Clara and whispered, "Mommy, do I have a daddy?" The question cut through Clara like a knife. She told Lily she had her, and that was enough. But later, she sat in the dark, tears streaming down her face. She had done everything to bury the past, yet it had found a way back through the mouth of an innocent child. She didn't know that that very night, hundreds of miles away, Alexander stood on his balcony, whispering her name, realizing the life he had built was hollow. Then, fate intervened. A group of developers arrived in the coastal town, planning a new resort. Clara overheard the name of their leader, Pierce Holdings. She immediately searched online. The first thing she saw was his face. Alexander Pierce. The possibility terrified her. The following Monday, Alexander arrived with a small team. As he drove through the narrow streets, he felt an uncanny familiarity. Walking near the bluffs, he glanced down and saw a woman pushing a stroller. Something about the curve of her shoulders made his heart race. Later, something drew him to a small florist shop. He walked in. The bell above the door chimed softly. She turned. Time stopped. "Clara," he managed to whisper. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice firm. "You live here." Before he could answer, a small voice called from the back room. "Mommy!" Lily appeared, her blue eyes bright, her smile wide. She ran and hugged Clara's leg. Alexander froze. His world narrowed to the child before him. The resemblance was undeniable. The same eyes, the same hair. His breath hitched as the realization washed over him. "She is Lily," Clara said quietly. "My daughter." He couldn't speak. Every wall he had built crumbled in an instant. For the first time in his life, Alexander Pierce understood what it meant to lose everything without even now knowing it was his. Chapter 4. The Redemption begins. "You should leave," Clara said, her voice strained. "It's too late." "I didn't know about her," he pleaded, his voice rough. "You chose not to know. There is a difference." Her words hit him harder than any accusation. Later, Alexander returned, desperate. "Please, let me be part of her life." "No." Clara's face hardened. "You don't get to decide that now. You had your chance." "She is my daughter," he cried, his voice breaking. "She is my whole world, Alexander. You can't just walk in and claim her because you suddenly remembered how to feel." He finally capitulated. "Let me earn it then. I won't leave. I promise. This time, I won't." In the days that followed, Alexander kept his distance. He bought flowers, sometimes standing silently in the shop while Clara worked, his presence cautious, humble. He had spent years controlling the world with words, but now silence was his only weapon. One afternoon, when the shop was busy, Lily struggled to reach a vase. Alexander instinctively helped her. "Thank you, mister," she started. "Alex," he corrected gently, smiling despite the pain in his chest. Clara watched, her heart conflicted. She couldn't deny that Alexander was trying. The arrogance was gone. All that remained was the quiet, patient pain of a man who had learned humility the hardest way possible. Do you think Clara should have forgiven Alexander immediately, or is earning trust the only way forward? Share your perspective. This is the moment of truth. Like and subscribe for the final beautiful chapter. Chapter 5, The Unbreakable Bond, final chapter. The following weeks melted into months. Alexander's presence became a reliable part of their days, constant like the tide. He never pushed, never assumed. He listened, even when her words contained anger. He helped out in the shop, his powerful hands clumsy with wrapping bouquets. Lily adored Mr. Alex, the kind man who bought her ice cream and told her stories about cities that touched the sky. One rainy afternoon, Clara found Alexander sitting outside the shop, soaked, holding a small, awkwardly wrapped bouquet. "You'll catch a cold," she said sharply, approaching with an umbrella. "I wanted to bring these," he said, handing her the flowers. "For Lily. I know I don't have to do this." He smiled weakly. "But I want to." Something shifted. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but the ice began to crack. She allowed him small moments, helping in the shop on weekends, short walks, sitting with Lily in the park while Clara watched. For the first time, she saw the man beneath the armor, the man who was lost and desperately trying to find his way back. When Lily turned 5, Alexander stopped them during a walk on the beach. He knelt in the sand, pulling a small box from his pocket. "This is not guilt," he said, his eyes fixed on hers. "This is the only thing in my life I am sure of. Love is the only thing that has made me want to be better. You and Lily are my home." Clara's eyes filled with tears. She had built walls to keep him out, but his patient tenderness had brought them down. "You broke me once," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "And I survived. But if I say yes now, it's because I want you in the life I built, not because I need you to save me." He nodded, accepting the terms of her strength. When she said yes, the sound of the sea swelled around them like applause. Lily clapped her small hands, feeling the pure joy of the moment. Months later, the florist shop was filled with laughter. Alexander had stepped away from the city empire, choosing a smaller, quieter office nearby. The town whispered less. Their story had transformed from gossip into a legend. A man who once thought he could buy the world, instead found everything he needed in a small coastal town. As the sun set, Alexander Pierce finally understood what it meant to have everything, and it had nothing to do with power. The man who once called love a weakness had learned that love was the only force that could save him. Chapter 6. The Unfinished Business. Subscribe now and hit that like button. If you think true love should always come before the boardroom, in the comments tell us, what kind of ethical business venture do you think Alexander should launch to redeem his past? 5 years of coastal peace. 5 years had passed since Alexander and Clara remarried. Their life in the small coastal town was idyllic. Lily, now 8, was thriving. A confident, curious girl whose laughter was the soundtrack to their home. Alexander had kept his promise, running a small, quiet consulting firm from a local office, choosing school plays over board meetings. Clara's florist shop, renamed the Seaside Bloom, was the heart of the community, and her drawings had earned her local recognition as an artist. They had found their peace, built on honesty, forgiveness, and the rhythm of the ocean. However, the old Leo, the sharp, ambitious mind, was restless, not for power, but for purpose. The call from the city. The catalyst arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. Alexander received a call from Daniel, his former business partner in the city. "Alex, it's about Pierce Holdings." Daniel's voice was strained. "Since you left, the new management has gone completely rogue. They're making aggressive, unethical acquisitions, using the company's influence to exploit vulnerable coastal communities, specifically targeting the very land around your town." Alexander felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. The company he built on cold logic was now threatening the life he had built on love. "They're using old loopholes you created, Alex," Daniel continued. "They're moving fast. Unless someone with deep institutional knowledge, someone like you, intervenes, they'll destroy that beautiful town and displace hundreds of families." Alexander hung up, his hands shaking slightly. He looked at the gentle rain falling on the hydrangea bushes outside. He had found peace by running away from the Empire, but now the Empire was coming for his peace. The new mission. That evening, Alexander sat Clara down after Lily was asleep. "I have to go back," he stated simply, knowing the words would cut her deeply. Clara's face went pale. "Go back? To the city? To that life? Alexander, we built this life here. You promised." "I promised I wouldn't leave you, and I won't," he insisted, taking her hands. "But the company I built is attacking this community. They're using my own playbook to destroy what we love. I can't ask the community to trust me if I don't fight to protect them with every resource I have." He explained the situation, the unethical acquisitions, the legal loopholes, the threat to their home. "This isn't the old ambition, Clara," Alexander pleaded. "This is redemption. I have to go back and dismantle the monster I created, using my power to protect, not to profit." Clara looked at him, seeing the fierce resolve in his blue eyes, the same eyes that once proclaimed her a mistake, but now held a commitment she couldn't deny. She saw a man fighting, not for a larger bank account, but for a smaller, more meaningful life. "If you go back," Clara warned, her voice firm, "you go back on our terms. You stay honest. You call us every night. And you never ever forget why you are fighting this battle." Do you think Alexander is risking too much by returning to the high-stakes world of the city? Or is this the final, necessary test of his redemption? The return of Alexander Pierce, the next morning, Alexander Pierce left the peaceful coast and returned to the glass and steel jungle. But this Alexander was different. His suit still impeccable, but his heart was anchored hundreds of miles away. He didn't return to his old penthouse. He rented a small, functional apartment. He didn't seek out old friends. He only sought out lawyers specializing in ethical corporate warfare. His mission was clear: acquire and dismantle the rogue management of Pierce Holdings. The boardroom was shocked when he walked in. The new CEO, a ruthless operator named Victor, laughed. "Alex, look at you. The humble florist. You can't fight us. We have the resources, the contracts, and the majority vote." "You have a company built on my legacy," Alexander countered, his voice steady. "And I'm here to reclaim its soul." The battle was fierce. Victor's team used every dirty trick, including leaking rumors to the press about Alexander's mental instability after his sudden departure years ago. Alexander, remembering Clara's humiliation, simply absorbed the blows. He fought back with meticulous data, exposing the illegalities of the new management and leveraging his deep, old connections. The turning point came when Alexander used his last remaining personal capital to buy back a small, decisive block of shares, giving him just enough power to call an emergency board vote. In the final tense boardroom showdown, Alexander didn't argue money. He presented a damning report detailing how Victor's greed was not only unethical, but was now becoming a massive legal liability, threatening the entire firm's future. The board, faced with losing billions, sided with Alexander. Victor was ousted. Meaningful conclusion. The true victory. 2 weeks later, Alexander returned to the coast, Defeated in the boardroom sense. He hadn't made a penny and was actually poorer, but victorious in soul. He immediately resigned as CEO of Pierce Holdings, installing Daniel with strict ethical oversight. He had done what he set out to do. He found Clara in the garden, arranging hydrangeas. "It's done," he said quietly. "The town is safe. I'm home." Clara looked up, her green eyes shining. She didn't ask about the stock or the vote. She saw the peace in his eyes, the clarity that had been missing even during their quiet years. "Welcome home, my husband," she said, rising and embracing him. Their true victory wasn't over a contract or a title. It was over the toxic desire for power. Alexander had finally chosen the simplicity of love over the complexity of an empire, proving his redemption was absolute. What special moment do you think Alexander should create next for Lily to celebrate his final victory and homecoming? Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow the journey of Alexander and Clara's enduring love. Chapter 7, The Dual Legacy. The architect and the artist. Subscribe now and hit that like button if you believe that children always inherit the best parts of their parents. In the comments, tell us, will Lily choose the path of the architect or the florist when she grows up? The resettling. A life rebuilt. 2 years had passed since Alexander's final return from his corporate battle. Their life had settled into a quiet rhythm, but this time it was reinforced by a deeper conviction. Alexander had completely detached from the world of billion-dollar deals. He dedicated his time to consulting local small businesses and pouring his passion into restoring an old maritime museum in the town, a non-profit project that filled the void of strategy and creativity he once found in empire building. Clara, now an established artist and florist, felt genuine peace. She knew Alexander was hers, not because of a promise, but because of his daily choice. Lily, now 10, was the perfect synthesis of both parents. She had the sharp, analytical blue eyes that loved dissecting the structure of everything, like Alexander, but a soul that was intensely sensitive and loved nature, like Clara. The architect's daughter, one evening, as Lily was doing her homework, she brought a model made of wooden blocks over to Alexander. "Daddy," she said, pointing to the complex structure, "I built a new pier. It has to be strong enough to withstand big waves, but it also has to be beautiful. Did I miscalculate the stability here?" Alexander looked at the model. It was an intelligent design, blending the rigidity of engineering with the aesthetics he had taught her. He looked at his daughter, his heart swelling with pride. "This design is very stable, Princess," Alexander smiled. "You've balanced the logic and the art." The moment made him realize that even though he had left the business, his legacy lived on in his daughter. A person who would build, but with a kinder soul than he ever had. The artist's legacy. The next day, Lily followed Clara to the flower shop. A special client had ordered a complex bouquet for a proposal, a true challenge of emotional storytelling and color balance. Lily watched her mother arrange the flowers, her blue eyes gleaming with focus. "Mommy, why are you putting that yellow rose next to the purple lavender?" Lily asked. "It seems wrong with all these whites and pinks." Clara smiled, explaining color theory and emotion carefully. "The yellow rose stands for betrayal and new beginnings after the storm. The purple stands for reconciliation and trust. I place them at the center. This bouquet isn't just about new love. It's about overcoming pain to find love." Lily was silent, and then her eyes lit up. "I get it. It's like how you and Daddy broke all the blocks. Mistake. And then built the beautiful, strong house forgiveness again." Clara felt a lump in her throat. Lily didn't just inherit Alexander's eyes. She inherited her parents' ability to see the complexity, the pain, and ultimately, the redemption of their history. What do you think Alexander would say to Lily when she asks why he once called her mother a mistake? The unexpected reunion. The family was enjoying a weekend picnic on the beach when a sleek black corporate car pulled up and parked. A man stepped out. It was Daniel, Alexander's former partner, the one he had entrusted with running Pierce Holdings. Daniel approached with a personal mission. "Alex," Daniel said, his eyes filled with respect. "I know you don't want to come back, but I came here to tell you that I can't do this alone." He wasn't talking about business. He looked at Clara and Lily. "The company is completely clean now, but it lacks an ethical vision. Alex, you taught me how to build a strong company, but Clara taught me that empathy is a better metric than profit. I'm here to ask Clara to serve as an ethical consultant for Pierce Holdings community projects. She is the only person who can ensure we never forget the vulnerable people we are supposed to serve." Clara and Alexander looked at each other. This was the final, total act of redemption. Alexander's old empire was officially inviting Clara's moral vision to guide its path. Clara smiled. "I have one condition, Daniel. I will work remotely, and every meeting must start after I drop Lily off at school." Alexander wrapped his arms around his wife and daughter, feeling an absolute peace. He had once thought he had to build skyscrapers to make history, but in fact, he only needed to build a home with love, patience, and honesty. It was the beginning of a new chapter, where both of them were the builders. Alexander building the legacy, and Clara building its heart. Would you like me to continue expanding the story with Clara's new journey in the corporate world, or move on to a new dramatic story? Chapter 8. The Ethical Architect. Subscribe now and hit that like button if you believe that empathy is the most powerful tool in the boardroom. In the comments, tell us, what kind of major project do you think Clara's first ethical review should focus on at Pierce Holdings? The new office. Jasmine in the machine. Clara's first month as the ethical consultant for Pierce Holdings was a study in contrasts. She worked remotely from a quiet, seaside office Alexander had set up for her, but her influence quickly permeated the glass towers of the city. The executives, initially skeptical of the florist consultant, quickly realized she wasn't there to soften the edges. She was there to rebuild the foundation. Her reports were meticulous, not just detailing financial risks, but human risks. Her first major challenge focused on an inherited project, a large-scale housing development intended for a vulnerable community near a newly acquired industrial zone. The project was technically profitable, but Clara saw the ethical flaw immediately. The housing is too close to the industrial noise and pollution, Clara stated in a video conference with Daniel and the project manager. The rent is affordable now, but the health risks will increase the long-term cost for the families and the municipality. It's short-term gain for long-term human detriment. The project manager, a young, ambitious man named Mark, resisted fiercely. "Mrs. Sterling, with all due respect, we've secured the permits. The profit margin is 22%. Your role is advisory, not to veto a fully legal, massive revenue stream." Clara looked at the cold logic, recognizing the ghost of the old Alexander. The strategy of empathy. Clara didn't fight with legal jargon. She fought with empathy and data. "Mark," Clara said calmly, "I understand the profit. But let me ask you, does Pierce Holdings want to be known for building beautiful buildings or for building stable lives? Right now, this project builds resentment and sickness." She then presented a simple but devastatingly effective counterproposal: the human cost. She showed projected long-term medical costs for the children living in the polluted zone, framing the lack of ethical consideration as a future public relations and legal liability, appealing to Daniel's caution. The better build. She used her architectural eye, honed by watching Lily and Alexander, to propose a slight redesign. Shift the housing development a mere half-mile away, using a former green zone that the town had already offered for community use. and integrate sound barriers into the design. The new profit. She demonstrated that by prioritizing community health and sustainability, they could secure government incentives and ethical investment bonds that would increase the long-term, stable profit margin to 22%, while drastically improving the company's ESG, environmental, social, and governance score. Clara's analysis was flawless. She had leveraged her humanitarian perspective to expose a cold, financial blind spot. She had used empathy as the most powerful strategic tool. Daniel, watching the exchange, was stunned by the clarity. "Mark," he interrupted, "Mrs. Sterling has demonstrated that the current plan is fiscally irresponsible and ethically bankrupt. We follow Mrs. Sterling's recommendation. We are not interested in short-term profits built on human cost anymore." The Sterling-Pierce Standard. Clara had not just won a debate. She had officially instituted a new standard at Pierce Holdings, the Sterling-Pierce Ethical Standard. The old ways of prioritizing profit over people were over. Alexander, who had remained silent during the entire deliberation, called her immediately after the meeting. "You are incredible," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You walked into that boardroom and changed the entire culture of the company with a single memo. You are the architect of its soul, Clara." "I learned from the best architect," she replied softly. "You taught me how to see the structures, Leo. I just added the flowers." The true victory was subtle. Mark, the ambitious young project manager, called Clara the next day. Not to complain, but to ask for her advice on how to integrate community feedback into the next project. The culture was changing. What advice do you think Clara gave Mark to help him transition from old-school ambition to the new ethical standard? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow Clara as she continues to build an empire of empathy. Chapter 9. The House of Second Chances. Subscribe now and hit that like button if you believe that sometimes healing the past means building a better future. In the comments, tell us, what kind of unique architectural detail do you think Lily will insist on adding to the new project? Clara's signature project. After successfully navigating the challenge of the industrial housing project, Clara, the ethical consultant, was given full authority by Daniel to select Pierce Holdings' next major community development. Her choice was deeply personal: a transitional housing center for single parents, particularly mothers, facing homelessness or domestic upheaval. The location she chose was symbolic: a large, neglected plot of land in the very same capital city where she had fled years ago, struggling to raise Lily alone in a tiny apartment while working as a junior consultant. Clara's vision for the Seaside Bloom House, named after her florist shop, was radical. It wouldn't just be temporary shelter. It would be a holistic center offering childcare, job training, leveraging Pierce Holdings' vast network, and business mentorship, spearheaded by Clara herself. The emotional blueprint. Clara designed the center's philosophy based entirely on her own painful experience: safety and dignity. Each unit would have a private entrance and a small garden plot, ensuring the privacy and dignity she desperately lacked in her first shared apartment complex. Community and support. A communal kitchen and co-working space would be built, mirroring the life-saving support she received from Adelaide and her neighbor, Conceição. Healing spaces. The common areas would be filled with natural light, soft colors, and fresh flowers, a non-negotiable from Clara, acknowledging the emotional healing power of beauty and nature. Alexander, now a consultant on the project, saw the pain and love poured into the blueprint. "It's beautiful, Clara," he said, reviewing the plans. "But it's more than architecture. It's your memoir. It's the shelter I wished I had when I was vomiting on the side of the road that night," Clara responded, her voice tight. "It's built on every fear I had and every lesson I learned. I have to build a place that tells those women, you are not a mistake. The Lily factor. Lily, now 10, became the project's official junior design consultant. She had inherited her father's eye for structure and her mother's empathy, and she used both. Lily's key demand was non-negotiable. The children need a secret garden just for them, with no signs, where they can plant anything they want, and a small, quiet space that looks like a lighthouse, where they can go when they are scared. Lily's insight that the children needed a place to process their fear and claim their own space was immediately integrated into the final design, adding an invaluable layer of emotional intelligence. The unexpected donor. As the project neared its groundbreaking, a major ethical investment consortium, the Thorn Foundation, agreed to provide the final, substantial funding needed. The name sent a jolt through Clara and Alexander. The Thorn Foundation was run by Daniel Thorn, Alexander's former partner, the man who ultimately helped facilitate the downfall of the old Pierce Holdings management. Daniel arrived at the coast to finalize the donation, bringing with him his elderly, sharp-witted aunt, Adelaide Thorn, the same Adelaide who mentored Clara. The reunion was emotional and profound. Clara, Adelaide said, embracing her warmly, I knew the moment I saw you in that small apartment that you were destined for something greater than consulting. I am so proud that the woman who healed herself is now building the foundation for others. Daniel revealed the reason for their investment. When my team reviewed the project, it wasn't the numbers that convinced us. It was the soul in the architecture. It was the fact that you built a home, not just a shelter. My aunt insisted this project carry our name because it represents the highest standard of ethical redemption in business. The circle was complete. The support network that once quietly saved Clara's life now publicly validated her vision, ensuring that the seaside Bloom House would be fully funded and secured for decades to come. Meaningful conclusion. The bloom of resilience. The groundbreaking ceremony was held under a clear, bright sky. Alexander stood next to Clara, Lily between them, holding a small shovel. Clara realized that her most profound achievement wasn't the successful business, the forgiveness, or the second chance at marriage. It was the fact that she had transformed her deepest wound, the pain of public humiliation and isolation, into a shelter of hope for other women. Alexander had redeemed his legacy. Not by building tall towers in the city, but by funding and protecting the House of Second Chances, built by the woman he had once wrongly called a mistake. What special detail do you think Clara will add to the design to honor her mentor, Adelaide? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow Clara as she continues to build an empire of empathy and resilience. Tuyệt vời. Tôi rất vui vì bạn thích cái kết đầy ý nghĩa này, nơi Clara biến nỗi đau của mình thành hy vọng cho người khác. Chúng ta hãy tiếp tục câu chuyện bằng một fan ngoại truyện cuối cùng, Final Epilogue, tập trung vào mối quan hệ giữa Clara và Lily, khi Lily bắt đầu bước vào tuổi thiếu niên và cách cô bé nhìn nhận về toàn bộ di sản gia đình mình. Đồng thời, Alexander nhận được một lời nhắc nhở sâu sắc về quá khứ. Đây là Epilogue, The True Bloom. Được viết bằng tiếng Anh. Epilogue. The True Bloom, subscribe now and hit that like button. If you appreciate the profound impact a mother's courage has on her daughter's future. In the comments, tell us, what kind of career do you think Lily will ultimately choose? Architecture or philanthropy? 5 years later, the architect and the artist. 5 years after the groundbreaking of the seaside Bloom House, life had found its most enduring pattern of peace. The center was flourishing, a beacon of hope in the capital city. Clara remained the active, ethical consultant for Pierce Holdings, ensuring the company maintained the high moral standards she had instituted. Lily was 15, a thoughtful, brilliant teenager who excelled in both advanced math and art. She was now tall, with her father's striking features, but her deep green eyes held her mother's quiet intensity and empathy. One afternoon, Lily came home from a school field trip to the capital. She was quiet, troubled in a way she rarely was. "Mom," Lily finally asked, sitting down in Clara's small, sunny office at the seaside Bloom. "In the city today, a girl recognized Dad. She said her mom told her dad used to be a really big, cold CEO, and that you were the wrong wife he left." Clara's heart seized. She had hoped this direct confrontation with the old gossip would come later. Clara closed her laptop and turned fully towards her daughter. "That is part of our story, Lily, and that girl's mother is only partially correct." Clara then pulled out 2 items: a framed photograph of the seaside Bloom house upon completion, and the small, old, velvet-covered box that once held the simple engraved sterling silver pen Alexander used to propose. "Your father was once cold. He chose money and pride over love. Yes, he made a terrible mistake, and I left alone. That is the truth," Clara said, her voice steady. She pointed to the house photo. "But he returned not to reclaim a title, but to reclaim us. He came back to dismantle the monster he created, and he used all his power and money to build this, a place of safety built on my pain, for other mothers. He fought for his soul, Lily." She handed Lily the velvet box. "He gave me this pen, not a diamond. It represents the partnership of equals he promised. The story isn't about the mistake he made. It's about the house we rebuilt, with the tools of forgiveness and honesty. That is your real legacy, sweetie. Never let anyone define your family by its beginning, only by its enduring strength." Lily looked at the house, then at the pen, then back at her mother. She understood. Her eyes filled with tears, but not of sadness, of profound pride. Alexander's final reminder, meanwhile. Alexander was in his home office, reviewing documents for the Maritime Museum project. He received an unexpected final piece of mail, a plain, unmarked envelope containing an old, yellowed photo. It was the picture of him and Clara from years ago, the one Clara had left face down on the table the night she left, the one he had tried to ignore for months. Attached was a short note, unsigned. "I found this when closing out some old accounts. It seems someone thought this chapter needed to be truly archived." Alexander looked at the photo, seeing the confident, arrogant CEO and the young, vulnerable woman beside him. He remembered the coldness of his words. It was a mistake. He then looked at the date on the back of the photo. The date was just a few weeks before Lily was conceived. Alexander pressed the photo against his chest. He knew that unseen hand, perhaps Daniel, perhaps even the old driver, Anthony, was giving him one last profound reminder. He had been given a second chance, a life he did not deserve, but had finally earned. He didn't throw the photo away. He placed it next to the velvet box in his safe, a permanent, silent reminder that the true measure of a man is not the empire he builds, but the humility with which he rebuilds his heart. The true bloom of the Sterling family. The story of Alexander and Clara wasn't just a love story. It was a testament to the fact that redemption is not a single event, but a lifelong commitment to integrity. They had raised a daughter who understood that true strength lies in vulnerability and forgiveness. What beautiful project will Lily launch when she is 18, blending her father's structure and her mother's empathy? Don't forget to like and subscribe to celebrate the enduring power of the Seaside Bloom.